conflict for many people, depending on how you were raised and socialized to it, can be very scary. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. As always, I am your host and very grateful to be with you for another podcast episode. This week, I wanted to talk a little bit about conflict. As you know, recently my has been released on apology and repair. But I wanted to talk about this idea of disagreement and conflict because we are socialized in a very particular way to conflict from a very early age. And I don't know how other people have been socialized, but I know how I have been socialized. That conflict is bad, that conflict is abnormal, that conflict means something is wrong. And conflict for many people, depending on how you were raised and socialized to it, can be very scary. As you know, a lot of the work that I do is trauma informed, and it takes into account an expanded context and paradigm of trauma. And so a lot of times, conflict can feel traumatic, it can feel dangerous. And when we are in disagreement and there is the anticipation of conflict, we avoid it. We want to avoid it. Our bodies, maybe our minds don't necessarily, but sometimes they do. But particularly our bodies want to avoid danger. Quick note before we dive in. If you're a woman in healthcare leadership, and especially if you're a woman physician or clinician leader looking for a space that truly gets the challenges that we experience as women leaders in medicine, check out our REMAP cohort. It's 4 months, real community, real skills, and 22 CME credits. Link is in the show notes. And so the brain is clocking, is sort of like our little librarian, the hippocampus, is remembering past instances of conflict, which felt scary, which felt dangerous, which felt extremely uncomfortable. Then anytime we even broach the possibility of conflict when we're in disagreement, then that memory kicks in. And however we've been socialized to, whatever our survival responses, and that's the other thing around conflict, we've been taught that we have to survive it. We haven't been taught a context of how do we thrive in the face of disagreement and conflict. Because here's the thing, the reality is that we all have different brains, we all come from different backgrounds, we all have different beliefs, values, and upbringings. But then when we're with one another in groups and teams and on projects and family environments, for us to be in that type of interaction, there is likely a shared value, a shared priority. And so we come together under a sort of a common value, but we'll come together with these varied ideas or varied perspectives along how to approach, right? How to approach the specifics of moving forward in a particular context. And so when we're going to disagree, like that is the nature of relationships. It is the nature of interaction. It is the nature of who we are as humans and what it means to move forward and thrive and innovate and create as humans. But when we're socialized, that conflict and disagreement is bad, and we're not taught how to navigate it, we're not taught how to repair when things go wrong, then it leaves us with an experience that conflict is to be avoided at all cost, or that we have to fight our way through and survive conflict. Or maybe we have to just submit and then let other people get what they want, right? These are sort of survival responses. So what I want to bring into the conversation for consideration is that conflict in and of itself is not bad. And some people even see conflict as a failure, like, oh, if we get into a fight, that means somehow we're failing. something, like we're failing to communicate well, or we're failing to be a team, or we're failing to be civil, whatever that is, right? And so if we begin to look at, just as, in past episodes, I've talked about emotions being data, emotions being information, we can begin to look at conflict in the very same way. Hey, before we get back to the episode, I want to take a moment to share something close to my heart. 17 years ago, someone saw my leadership before I could see it myself. That experience changed everything for me. And that's exactly why I created the REMAP cohort. If you're a woman physician or leader in healthcare who's tired of being talked over, burned out from carrying conversations you don't have language for, or just craving a space where you don't have to explain being the only one in the room, this is for you. REMAP is a 4-month cohort, a small, intimate community for women, physicians, and leaders in healthcare, where you'll build real communication skills and community, navigate the hard stuff, and yes, earn CME credit in the process. 22 Category 1 AMA CME to be exact. Listen, you deserve a space that pours into you, not one that continues to extract from you. Find out more, reserve your spot, or schedule a discovery call at mindremappingacademy.com. Also, the link is in the show notes. What if disagreement or conflict was not a failure? What if it was not a bad thing? What if having disagreement that is maybe leads to a conflict of ideas? There's various levels of conflict. I did a webinar some time ago, and maybe I'll sort of redo this webinar, but I did a webinar some time ago that talked about there are different aspects of conflict. There are conflict of ideas, conflict of values, conflict of perspectives, conflict of pathways forward, right? So there's different types of disagreement and conflict. And when we understand what type of conflict we're having, it makes it easier for us to begin to resolve it. But that's exactly what I'm saying. What if we started to look at disagreement and conflict as information? It's information that there is a misalignment of thought, ideas, and values. Sometimes the disagreement is indication that there's a miscommunication, because sometimes disagreement arrives, but two people are saying the same thing. They're saying it in different ways and in different language, because remember our different filters in our brains. We have these pictures that we form when we try to communicate through words, and then the other person has their filters they're listening through, so the picture may or may not be the same thing. So oftentimes disagreement and conflict arises out of miscommunication. So when we start to look at disagreement as information, conflict as information, not about the character of the person, right? We have to be mindful of what information are we actually deriving, right? Not as information about the character of the person, but about the item that is being disagreed upon, or the subject that is being disagreed upon, or maybe the method in which is being communicated. So my invitation is for us to begin to look at, when there's conflict, what is the question that we want to ask? Okay, take a step back. What is the disagreement actually about? So that's the first question. What is the disagreement actually about? The second thing is, what is not getting heard? What may not be getting held, right? What is being misunderstood? So that takes clarification. That takes, okay, this is what I said, and what did you hear me say? We can also look at what values are we coming from that are different? What perspectives are we coming from that are different? And so when we think about conflict in this way, when we think about there's information that this disagreement is giving us, then we can begin to examine that information between two people, or if it gets too heated, you could take a step back and examine it each individually and then come back to the table and say, hey, okay, I think this is where the pathway started to go in a different direction than we were intending it. And what you do is you find the common value, right? This is what we both agree upon. And then you begin to get a little bit more specific, chunk down, we call it, until you come to where that division of thought or where that disagreement of thought is. And that's where you can begin to say, here's where my perspective, here's the perspective I'm coming from. Here's the perspective I'm coming from. Maybe you're saying the same thing, maybe you're not. And then begin to look at, well, where's the middle ground that meets the higher value, right? And so many times you can resolve conflict just by doing that, right? Just by recognizing that this is information, not failure. It's information, not danger. It's information, not a person just being obstinate or being contrary. And that is what I invite you to do this week, is to look at the areas of life where conflict may be happening, or when a disagreement comes up this week for you. Begin to listen for what information is that disagreement telling you? What is it telling you? What information is it giving you about the communication, about what values are not being heard, about what perspectives are not being heard? And begin to be curious and inquire about that. All right. And so, with that, I invite you to move forward and test this out in the field. Test this out in the field. And let me know how it goes. Share this episode with a friend, a family member, or colleague. Get an accountability partner and practice it, because practice makes progress, not perfection. And we can talk more about what are different ways to resolve conflict in language in a future episode. All right. Leave a review. Let us know how you're liking our topics. And I look forward to hearing your feedback on the TEDx talk. Please, the link will be in the show notes. Please go listen and share. And until the next time we see each other, stay empowered.